Again, thank you so much for everyone who's coming today. My name is Eliana, and I am the co-founder and co-chair of the Eastside Change Coalition, who is hosting this conversation today. And along with Liam, Gaia, and Trey, we would like to give everyone a big welcome, and also an extra welcome to our featured guests here today. We have Redmond, City of Redmond Mayor Angela Burney, and then the Chief of Police of Redmond, Daryl Lowe. So thank you guys so much for coming. And we're just going to go through a bit of introductions for today. We'll start with ourselves as the Eastside Change Coalition, who we are and why we are here. And then I'd like to give each of the representatives here a chance to introduce themselves and talk a bit about who they are. And then we're going to start the conversation for about an hour and a half. And then for the last 30 minutes, we'd like to open up the conversation to the public to ask any questions that they might have for our guests here today or anyone in the call at all. So like I said, my name is Eliana Swai, and I'm here with my other co-chairs, Liam, Gaia, and Trey, and we're all residents of either Kirkland, Redmond, or Bellevue. I am a high school senior. Gaia and Trey are in their second year of college, and Liam is in his first year of college, and we've been super active in our schools and in our communities and different clubs and programs, just promoting equity and inclusion within our school system and trying to create a more comfortable and safe and inclusive space for our schools. And then in the wake of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd's death earlier this year, we saw a lot of protests and demonstrations happening in Seattle, and we love to get involved with those. But then when we came back to our own towns and cities where we live, we saw that the conversation hadn't really started. And so we saw this as an opportunity to create a platform for the BIPOC folk in our community to be able to share their experiences and speak their minds and make sure that they really get that seat at the table, so that the people who are representing them are representing them accurately and they have a say of what is going on in their city. So that's mainly why we started the Eastside Change Coalition and why we're having this conversation today. So that was a bit about us, but I would like to pass it on to our guests here today. So if Mayor Angela Burney, if you could speak a little bit about who you are, what you do, and then speak a little bit about how the Black Lives Matter movement has impacted Redmond and any conversations that you guys have had so far. And then after you, we'll go on to Chief Lowe.
Sure. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting us here today. And I know it took a while to schedule this, but I'm glad that we were able to find a time that worked with your schedules and our schedules. So I'm very happy to be here today. I'm Mayor Burney. I took office in January of this year, and what a year it's been. So a lot of trials and tribulations for sure for everybody in our community. To your question about how Black Lives Matter has affected Redmond, I guess I'll take a step back. So I'm the executive of the city. I run the city staff. I'm in charge of them, as well as making sure that we're serving our community at large. So from all the different pieces and parts that means, be it water, sewer, roads, other community activities, you name it, we try to cover it within our city, and making sure we're taking care of everybody. So as far as how the Black Lives Matter movement has affected me this year, I want to go back because from my experience in my life, the tragedies that unfolded this year were just a reminder of all of those that have happened in years past that have impacted my life from when I was younger as well. I was born in 1968, which is a really tumultuous year of our country. And unfortunately, some things have continued and some things have gotten better, but many things have continued in the strain and stresses on our communities and our society. So as this year unfolded with all of the challenges with COVID and the impacts to different communities, I saw the most recent events from the summer, the death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and others, as a reminder that we have not come very far. So with my position that I hold in this city, I'd already started on trying to have a more inclusive city and continue the work that had already been done. But I think it brought to the forefront that there's still so far we need to go. I've been working with my staff and the community at large to try to move that needle forward. Many of you know government works slowly, but I hope that we can make some greater impacts on our community and improve the systems that we have in place, be it representation, be it housing, be it transportation, human services, all of those different areas, to making sure that people have every opportunity that I was afforded as I was growing up and as I'm living my life. So for me, that just has once again refocused the idea that we just have a long way to go, and there are things that we can do, be it short-term or long-term, to make our communities better. Thanks for letting me speak, by the way. Thanks for letting me share that.
Of course, thank you so much. And then if we could have Chief Lowe, if you could say who you are, speak about yourself, and a little bit about how BLM has impacted Redmond.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Chief Darrell Lowe, obviously of the Redmond Police Department. I've been the police chief here coming up on a year here next week. I came here from Southern California after a 27-year career with the Santa Monica Police Department, having worked all aspects of municipal police department, et cetera. I've been very fortunate to meet some wonderful people here in the Pacific Northwest and have an opportunity to lead a great police department forward, specifically for the Black Lives Matter movement. It has given me an opportunity as a chief of police to, I'll say, share my vision and philosophy around policing and community policing with a broader community and even with a statewide audience, as I was selected to participate on the governor's task force on police reform, so that I can bring a voice and a perspective to that conversation to help law enforcement as a whole within the state of Washington move forward. Thank you.
Cool. So thank you guys for those introductions. Now, there's just some things we wanted to talk about first, and then we can have the discussion flow whichever direction feels best. So the next part of the conversation will focus primarily on the Redmond Police Department. We've done some digging around just to figure out kind of where they stand in terms of their policy and their procedures. And we had found that they have founded a community equity action team. And basically it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a council that advises the chief of police on issues related to equity and transparency and social justice. And that council is picked or is open for anybody to apply in the city of Redmond, and represents a wide variety of backgrounds. But I couldn't find anything that specifically said how often the police department interacts with the community equity action team, and what the community equity action team, what power they actually hold when it comes to decision making amongst the police department. So if Chief Lowe, if you could talk about that.
Yeah, so the Community Equity Action Team was started approximately 3 years ago. And as you pointed out, it's comprised of various members of the Redmond community that represent either undervoiced or underrepresented communities within the city of Redmond. They are an advisory group to me. So as information or issues come up, they are there to be the voice, I'll say, for their respective segments of our population. As far as authority, it is not a governing body. They are an advisory body to me. So they don't have any, I'll say, control or authority over policies or decisions of the department, but they help to inform me so that I have a clearer picture of what the needs and asks are of the community as I make policy determinations.
Right. And so how often do you meet with them?
So we meet every other month. With COVID, there was about a 3 or so month gap in which we didn't meet, but now we are back on track for our bi-monthly meetings by way of these virtual platforms.
Right. And what do those conversations like usually look like? Is it just the board has an opportunity to say whatever on their mind, or are there like guided questions, or like how are those meetings framed pretty much?
So the meetings are actually facilitated by I'll call her a professional facilitator. Channing Ray was hired by the city to handle our I'm drawing a blank on it, deconstructing bias training, which all City of Redmond employees participate in. So we, I'll say, extended her contract over to the Community Equity Action Team. So it is actually facilitated by her. And the conversation can be either whatever is agendized or whatever is, I'll say, timely and relevant that the group wants to bring forward. We are currently working on action steps for the group for community outreach, engagement, and involvement specifically from the Community Equity Action Team, so that more people know about their existence and have an opportunity to participate on the Community Equity Action Team. And then as of our last meeting, we actually have a couple of young adults from Redmond that have attended a couple meetings and have expressed interest in joining, I'll call it the board, or joining that particular group, because once again, it is open to all segments of the community. And I also want to make sure that I hear the, I'll say the young voices in the community as well.
Right. Okay, that's good to hear. And you mentioned there's plans to increase advertising and make it more known about, make the community more aware that there is this equity action team. So what tangible plans do you have in place to do that? Or do those plans not exist yet?
So the thing that they have coming up that we worked through in the last meeting, they're actually going to have a pop-up event where they will be passing out masks to community members. Obviously with COVID right now, there aren't any public gatherings. I'll say in a non-COVID environment, there are several outward public-facing events that the city had to include Derby Days, the Christmas light ceremony, et cetera. They would have participated in those particular events. So that is one of the things that we're looking at right now is how to better advertise the existence of this group and seek additional participation, in this quasi-lockdown. Some of the members of the group do have technical and social media skills, so we're looking to try and tap into and harness that as a way to reach out to the larger community.
Got you.
So if any of the youth here want to get involved, you guys are way more technically savvy than us. We'd gladly have you, and that would be a task that we would sign you guys up for.
For sure. And just to reiterate, the beginning portion of this will be a lot of us asking questions. It can be free form. We'll hold like recommendations or like things that we see need to be changed soon, not exactly as demands, but just things that we've researched that we want to give our 2-piece on. We'll save that towards the end, but yeah, any information and all information is appreciated here. So the next portion or the next aspect I kind of talked about is this community court. So again, how I understood this is an alternative court that allows people who have been convicted or not convicted, charged of a crime, to basically dismiss their case by doing community and social service work. And as I was researching it, it sounded like police officers, if they do charge somebody with a minor offense, whether that's theft or something else relatively insignificant, they can refer that individual to community court as opposed to the typical court. And I was wondering what basically what are the guidelines to send an individual to community court versus regular court, and kind of what's the goal around that?
So with community court, it's not at the discretion of the police officer. It's actually at the discretion of the prosecutor's office. And as you mentioned, it's for nonviolent, I'll call them somewhat minor offenses. And then as far as the deciding criteria, that again is up to the prosecutor, looking at the totality of the circumstances of the current charge or current crime, and also the past history of the individual that is involved. And that is actually a King County program. We participate in it, but that is not, I'll say 100% driven by the Redmond Police Department or the city of Redmond. We do partner with King County courts on that particular program.
And I will just add that the community court in general is a really groundbreaking program that was started by a judge, and I can't recall her name, but she was a judge in King County, and she saw a lot of, like many of us have seen, a lot of low-level offenses can kind of escalate into a lot of challenges for individuals, when perhaps if we had intervened earlier on with more of a diversion program, that would be much more successful. And so she started this program. It's a coordinated effort between our prosecutor's office, King County, and other state agencies to help fund it. And then we also partner with a lot of nonprofits in the area as well. So it's not just to help those individuals who are struggling to manage their lives. It helps them to get some better structure in their lives, gives them the opportunity to have jobs, to do community service, to do a lot of other assistances that they might not always get. But also we bring in other nonprofits such as Hope Link, NAM Eastside, many of the other areas that people need assistance with. And we work really closely with them as well to provide those opportunities, just not just for those individuals that are part of community court, but also for other community members in our city, in our community, that also need assistance like that to help them out along the way. But the whole idea of community court in general is to divert out of the criminal justice system and to get people the skills and the tools that they need to help survive in our society productively. It's been such a success that the community court program has been attempted to be duplicated in other areas in King County as well. Unfortunately, right now with the pandemic and a reduction in funding through some of the sales tax areas that used to fund some of it, some of these community court programs might be reduced. And so we're really pushing hard and lobbying hard for King County to continue to fund this program, because it has been such a success and has really helped many individuals as well as our community at large to help people get better skills to be more productive members of our community. But it's an amazing program. If when we start it up again publicly, once COVID's over, I highly recommend people coming to watch it on Wednesdays and see kind of how the process goes and what a much better system it is for helping people get better and improve their lives.
Got it. And you mentioned that King County is primarily responsible, or it sounded like King County is primarily responsible for funding the community courts. So is the budget's not decided by Redmond, it's decided by King County?
Yes, it is funded mostly through King County and some grants as well. And so that is one of the areas that we're concerned about in the King County budget. We are hopeful that they will retain the program because it is such a success, and because it actually reduces costs in other areas. If you can divert people out of the criminal justice system, it is a much less expensive, just from a financial standpoint, than it is for people to go into the criminal justice system. It's the same kind of theory as if you can keep people housed, it is much less expensive than if a person becomes homeless. The expenses just go up dramatically to try to rehome someone. So it's under the same those same theories. But yeah, if the King County budget recently, I think it just came out yesterday. I think it was yesterday, and I haven't had an opportunity to read through and see where the initial budget is landing on community court. But that would be an area of concern for me to maintain that opportunity in our community.
Got it. That's good information. So jumping ahead to another topic that we want to bring up. So again, this is another question directed towards the Redmond Police Department. So it looks like there's a new full-time mental health professional, Susie Kroll, I believe is her name. And the purpose of having Susie Kroll is obvious. I mean, she goes when police officers are deployed. She sometimes accompanies them when the situation is demanding de-escalation, and Susie Kroll is, of course, educated in de-escalation. So could you talk a little bit about like how, basically what was the intention, and how Susie Kroll is, how Susie Kroll is basically requested to go with a police officer during a scene? Like in what situations is Susie Kroll deployed, essentially? And who makes that decision whether to deploy Susie Kroll or not, who again is the full-time mental health professional?
So just for clarification, all members of the Redmond Police Department are trained in de-escalation. That is a requirement of commissioned police officers in the state of Washington. So all officers actually do have de-escalation training. So the impetus of the mental health co-response program that we currently have in place was as a result of a grant opportunity from WASPIC, which is the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. We were awarded a grant which allowed us to bring on Ms. Kroll in a part-time capacity for that mental health co-response. This was in existence prior to my arrival here in Redmond. I have familiarity with this type of co-response model because we had a similar model where I came from in Southern California program, which I helped to finalize down there. So I realized the value in having a co-responder. Fast forward to since me taking the helm at the police department, again, realizing that this was a grant funded program. You're not always successful in getting grants year to year. So in January of this year, I had a retirement of a commissioned police officer. So I reallocated the funding from that commissioned police officer position to the mental health co-response, or to the mental health provider position, so that now Ms. Kroll is actually a full-time employee of the Redmond Police Department and is no longer funded by the grant. With that being said, we were awarded the grant for 2021, so I will be bringing on a part-time mental health professional in addition to Ms. Kroll. And ultimately what my vision is for this co-response model is to enhance that to additional full-time capacity once our city budget allows for that. But in the interim, as long as we are awarded the grant, we will continue to staff as that grant allows. One of the challenges that exists within the mental health field is that there are not a lot of qualified mental health practitioners available for hire. So even though we want to add additional resources or additional staffing to that position, there are not qualified MHPs in the field right now. There are a number of individuals in various programs and various psychology programs throughout the state, but they're not deployable as of yet. So one of the conversations that we're having is for the Redmond Police Department to be essentially the training ground, if you will, because they have to have a number of hours or a number of field hours. So we would like to partner with those particular students looking to embark upon this particular career path and help them get their certification so that they are available not just to the Redmond Police Department, but to the greater community, because the need for mental health professionals exists, nationwide and region-wide. So we will do our part in trying to help develop and prepare individuals to step into those roles.
Got you. And of course, that sounds like it'll take money and resources. So you mentioned that when the budget allows for you to add additional mental health professionals. So what do you mean when you say the budget allows? Do you mean when the budget increases so that you can you have capacity for another mental health professional, or is that when you decide what the budget looks like so that you can fit in a mental health professional?
So everything in municipal government costs money. You mentioned before time and money. So yes, it is both a time and money aspect. So basically, quickly, how municipal budgets work, if I were to add an additional full-time person, that would have to be an increase to my overall operating budget. I know there's a lot of conversation around reallocation of police funding, defund the police, et cetera. In most police operations, it is employee driven. There are not a lot of programs or different things where cuts can occur. So any cuts in a police budget impact staffing, which in turn impacts community safety. As mentioned, I already, made a reallocation of a commissioned police officer position to fund Ms. Kroll's position. Moving forward, we will continue to look for opportunities, to allocate funding to expand that particular program.
Got you. And involving the program you just talked about, that involves basically helping develop medical health practitioners who could serve as mental health professionals under the police department. Are you doing something similar in trying to find room in the budget for a program like that to exist, or is there not much planning off the ground besides the initial idea?
I'm not quite following the question. So we have the co-response program. I indicated we're looking to try and expand that program, and there currently aren't individuals qualified to step into those roles. So we are going to try and partner with the educational institutions to provide opportunities for those that want to become mental health practitioners to do their field-based work with us so that they can in fact become qualified. So the program currently exists. The program will be expanded as funding allows, and more importantly, as more qualified people become available to fill those particular roles. Since this is a mental health practitioner, there are very specific rules and guidelines that the person, or qualifications that the person must meet in order to operate in that capacity. So we first have to find a person that meets all of those prerequisites, before we can put them in the program.
Got you. Okay, that is good information to know. So last thing I want to talk about the police department. So this community task force on homelessness, it sounded like there was also an individual who was kind of the spearhead of the task force on homelessness, who also gets deployed with police officers in the field when it's appropriate to do so. Is that the case? Just so I understand that. So
the city does have a homeless outreach, I'll call it coordinator, but that person actually works out of our human services division. They do work closely with the police department when there's a need for police involvement, but that person operates independent of the police department. But like any other aspect of city services, we work collaboratively across departments and across divisions.
Okay, got it. And so involving a lot of the Eastside homeless shelters, for example, Friends of Youth, the Sophia Way, Catholic Community Services, and others, I noticed that you had, or the police department page had promoted some of these Eastside homeless shelters. I wanted to ask, how is the Redmond Police Department supporting these Eastside homeless shelters? When you say support,
I mean, we work collaboratively with all organizations, within the city. We don't support if I don't know if the question is financial. We don't provide any type of financial support, but we will partner with, any entity or organization, within the city, to provide either guidance, insight. Oftentimes the clients of these various, entities or organizations may have contact with the police. So we will try and collaborate with them, with their caseworker, to make sure that they are receiving the services that they need. Oftentimes they call it the continuity of care. While we're not necessarily caregivers, but like I said, oftentimes we will have contact with those same individuals. So if we can let their case manager or caseworker know, if that person is struggling, or if they've had some type of contact or interaction with the police, then that can help them as they help them chart their path towards, programs or recovery and that type of thing.
Cool. Okay, that's all we wanted to talk about for now with the police department. I think, Guy, you had some questions for Mayor Bernie.
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to start with the budget priorities. And we saw that there was kind of some rough ideas of the 2021-2022 budgets and its priorities, those being around healthy and sustainable, safe and resilient, vibrant and connected, and strategic and responsive. We noticed there was a lack of specific priority around diversity, as there was one last year in 2019, 2020, or this year. And so this is kind of a two-pronged question about where is diversity sort of fitting in this next year's budget, and also what is kind of the current state of the budget, how it's looking and in conjunction to how it has been this year, as in which departments are getting increases percentage wise, less than financially, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. I'm going to try to answer your question, and please let me know if I'm answering all of it, because that's pretty complex. So yes, so this year, when I took office prior to COVID, January, we kind of reorganized the priorities of the city. There used to be 5, and now we have 4. Excuse me. So you got them all correctly. So within each of those priorities are the different, what we call offers that go into those. So healthy, in all of those, there's different offers like clean water or stormwater management or things like that. The equity and the diversity and equity inclusion work had been included in the city as there was a budget offer, or part of a budget offer last year in some of the work or last 2 years, the biennial budget that the city did. And we put some money in there to hire a outside person, Jen and Kelly Ray, that the chief mentioned, to do diversity, equity, inclusion work in the city to train the staff. But part of my goal in becoming mayor was to elevate that position, to make it a paid position. Currently, we have staff members that volunteer their time to do that work, and I think it's really important to actually pay for the work that's being done. So with the current budget that will be coming out to the council on October 6th, so that will be the budget in whole. We will have in that, and I've already shared with the community that we are in it funding a diversity and equity inclusion manager. So that person would be in charge of both the internal training and challenges and improvements that the city needs to make in hiring and everything else, as well as the external work that needs to be done with the city. We already do some external work. However, I think there's a lot more opportunity there. And so my goal is to hire someone to be in charge of all of that. And we're using our consultant, Shannon, to help us develop what that job description is and what that could look like for our city of Redmond, because she's very familiar with our city now. So that's the diversity, equity, inclusion work. So just because it's not in the top priority or buckets, as I like to call them, it doesn't mean that it's not a valuable part of our city and not important and not included. It is included in the budget for this biennium. So, and then you asked about the budget in general. So the whole budget gets delivered to our council and our community and our staff on October 6th. And in that will be the total of our budget this coming biennium for 2 years is about $880 million. It's less than this current budget because of the downturn in the economy and in COVID. This current year, we have made some changes to our budget. We had open positions that we didn't hire for. We had every department asked to make reductions in training, travel, unnecessary things. And so we had to reduce our budget just from, I'd say, March till this end of this year by about $7 million. And so we were able to do that without losing any staff, without cutting significantly any programs. If you've been out to some of our parks, you've noticed that perhaps they're not being watered there before all the rain. They were getting a little brown. So that was one of the areas, for example, that we saved money on by not watering, things like that, and then not having to mow because the grass isn't growing. So we made some changes like that. For this upcoming biennium, unfortunately, we still have some serious shortfalls in a few different areas. One is general sales tax. And so as the chief mentioned, most of our money goes to paying for staff. So that will create a problem with the number of staff that we have. We also have reductions in our recreation fund because, as you all know as well, we can't really hold events or have recreation activities or have like summer classes or a lot of the other things that Redmond has always prided ourselves in offering. So we're not collecting funds in that way. And we also have a challenge with our utilities, with our water and wastewater. Normally, in a normal year, we would have had a challenge this year without COVID because it was actually a very wet spring and so people didn't use as much water. However, with our largest employers not having people come into work and people not using as much water, we actually have a pretty significant impact to our utility fund as well. And so in that area as well, we're going to have some challenges. I think the forecast is for us to be, and I don't quote me on the exact number, but I think about $21 million short over the next biennium. And there's some ways we can reduce our expenditures as a city. And but there are some things that we just can't do because so much of our money goes to paying for staff. So also in the budget, we have a staff reduction of about 21 positions. Of about 14 of those are actually filled right now. And so if the budget passes as is, which I assume there will be some changes from the council, we will unfortunately be removing about 14 positions from our budget. We also have a recovery plan that we're working on so that as recreation opportunities open up, as our city campus is opened up to people again, we will be able to bring some of those positions back as well. So that's part of our plan. It's just right now with COVID, a lot of things are unknown and we're not sure when those things will be happening. You know, the biggest impact will be when there's a vaccine and people feel safe enough to be around each other. So that's one of the major things that we're waiting on. So that's kind of a bigger view of the budget. I highly encourage you to read it when it comes out October 6th. It'll be online. It is a big document, but we've tried to make it understandable for people. The way we budget by priorities is so that you can think about like, what are the outcomes you really want as a city? For example, as a city, one of the highest priorities is clean drinking water. And so that's how we spend the money so that we know we're going to get clean drinking water in the end for our community. And so that's how we structure our budget. It's not like a line item budget like you would think about if you were balancing a checkbook or something like that. It's more of like, what do we really want to see as we move forward into the future? And it helps us because priorities change over time. What was important 20 years ago to the city might not be as important now. So it's important for us to get the input from our community and think about, you know, what are the services that we need to be providing as a city. So those are some of the things that'll be coming up. Did I answer your question or what you were hoping to get out of that?
Yeah, that was a great answer. I was curious about you mentioned the training coming in from last year's or this year's budget, I guess. And I kind of wanted to, could we dig a little bit deeper and like hear a little bit about how that's been, if it's been effective, just to understand a little bit more about what's been going on. And also I also knew that there was additional funds, investments towards recruitment and retention efforts about increasing diversity in Redmond's workforce. And so I was also curious about the effectiveness and the results of that as well.
Sure. because I took office in January, I actually haven't had the anti-bias training that our consultant has offered. And in fact, I was just talking with her on the phone yesterday because of with COVID, how she had originally done the training was just not possible. And so we're with, I can't say things have settled down, but I feel like we're in a place where we can really start thinking about how do we make sure all of us, including me, all of our staff are trained and have that level set. And then what is the next step? What do we do after that? So currently right now we're evaluating how many staff members haven't had the training. Because I haven't had it, I can't give you the perspective of what that training looks like, but I will say there's feedback from our staff. For some people, it felt like this is kind of where it was challenging for me, but not so challenging. Like it was okay. For some staff members, I think it was really challenging. And for other staff members, their knowledge base is just way beyond that. So it was a good form for level setting, but I think that then we have that opportunity to kind of continue on to the next steps of what does that look like to train as a staff. You asked about hiring. I'm very conscious of the staff that we have in Redmond, and does it really reflect our community? Because that's really the goal for me as a government organization. Do we really reflect what our community looks like? As an example, when I joined council I was elected in 2015, I joined one other woman on the council, and so now there were 2 women on the council at that time. There had been a few other women in the past, but it was really not reflective of our community, even from a gender standpoint. And at that time in 2016, when I took office, we had no one of color on our council at all. And so when Council President Padia joined our council, she was the first person of color to ever hold a city council position in the city of Redmond. And that was pretty monumental to go from never having that to someone actually slightly being more representative of our community. And so I still see that as being my job as mayor of the city, is to continue to move that. How do we recruit better? How are we training people that want to come into this government work? What are we doing in our community that allows people to think, well, maybe I do want to go work for a city. Maybe instead of going and I know we have a lot of software engineers in our area, but maybe instead of going into working in software engineer like my parents, maybe I want to think about working in a government job. Maybe that is exciting and interesting to me. And I think there's a lot of opportunities there, but it's going to take actual really going out there and showing people what this kind of job can be like, what working for government can be like in all the different areas that we have, and really making a change from the typical, what people think of as a government worker, to what people could make it into. And so part of our goal is to really shift that narrative about how we're recruiting, where we're recruiting, what do our hiring practices look like? What are we doing as a city that's keeping us from hiring a diverse workforce? Maybe we need to think about removing those barriers. I had a conversation a little while ago with one of my employees about a job that was that is open, and I said, is that a job that requires a college degree? And he's like, well, I think so, because a college degree, you'd have all these skills. And I said, yeah, but what if someone has worked their way in a community and they actually have all those skills, but that one thing they don't have is that college degree? Are we limiting our pool of employees because we make certain boundaries because we think that's the right thing? But in reality, someone could have gained all of those skills from life experiences and the other jobs that they've held without having that college degree. And someone could see that and think, I'm not going to apply for that because I don't have that diploma. And I think that is short-sighted on our part, because not everyone has had the opportunity to get a college degree, and it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be competent in particular roles. And so I think that just little things like that we really have to take a look at in hiring for the future. So long answer. I've been thinking a lot about it. I don't know, you all are about the right age. My daughters are around your age. And one thing I noticed, and I used to teach, is that there was always this huge push, you have to go to college, you have to go to college. And there's a lot of the kids I taught, and I see a lot of my daughter's friends, and you know what? College might not be the right fit for them for whatever reason. But there are so many jobs in our city and other places that are trade jobs, and they're great, highly skilled jobs that pay really, really well. And I think we're pigeonholing kids into thinking that all of them have to go to that really structured college atmosphere and that they can't be successful, because I think you can be in a lot of different ways. And I think a lot of people would much rather be out working in our parks, fixing all kinds of things rather than being stuck in a classroom. And so those are, sorry, could talk a little while about this, but I just think we have a lot of opportunities that we really need to explore to make sure we're really thinking about how do we diversify, how do we work with the schools, how do we work with the technical college, how do we work with the colleges to help people think about coming and working for a city instead of something else. So those are all thoughts I have about diversifying, but I know I only know this much, and I know there's a lot of opportunity out there to learn a lot more about how we can really diversify our workforce for the future. You asked, sorry.
Yeah.
Could talk for a while on it.
Yeah, so basically there's like still a lot of room for improvement is what I'm hearing.
Oh,
So,
yes,
yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
And diversifying the workforce, boards, and all these other things is still going to be a priority for next budget. And
it has to be, because one of the things that happens in the city in our workforce is that it is a very good job. It is a good job to work for a city for a few different reasons. There's healthcare, there's retirement, and most of our employees are parts of unions, and the unions help them, maintain their work hours and, do all those other things for them. But once someone gets into that union, that means that they usually stay. And so we don't have a lot of turnover. And so you have to think about, you really have to play the long game on how we're really going to think about over time, how we're going to improve the diversity of our workforce. It will never be it can't be a one and done. It really has to be a systemic change to how we do that. And we also have to be providing the job that makes people want to stay if we are recruiting a diverse workforce. So if we have systems that are set up that work really great for someone that looks and acts like me, that might not work for a lot of other people. And so we really have to be cognizant of the systems that we have here to retain those staff that we're trying to bring in and retain, right? So it takes a lot of thought and long-term thinking about all those things too.
thank you.
Yeah, I just had a follow-up question about that. So we were talking with the chief of police just a second ago, and we had mentioned the community equity action team. So is there any council or any like team that is similar to that basically is comprised of diverse members of the Redmond community that frequently interacts with the council member or with the council? And in addition to that, like I keep hearing that we want to increase diversity. So are there any tangible plans of like, here's how we get more diverse applicants to come to the council board? Or is it more just like we hope that more diverse people show up and then go from there?
Oh, so you're talking about in particular for the city council?
Yes, for the city.
Okay. So, well, I think the best example I have is, I was asked to run for council. Never thought about it, wasn't in my realm, didn't think about it. And I was asked multiple times by multiple people because I was on the Parks and Trails Commission at the time. That's one way people run for council is they get asked. I think there's more of a political awakening where more people are running than had ever before. And I think that's wonderful. When we had an opening, when I was one of two women on the council, the other female on council due to job reasons needed to leave council and resign her position. We had an opportunity to recruit, and I intentionally recruited people of color and talked with them about, hey, how about join council? How about apply for this job? Wouldn't it be interesting to be a part of that government structure? And so I recruited Ms. Potier. She was on the Parks and Trails Commission at the time and had been on the Planning Commission. I recruited her to run because I think it's really important for people to be asked and nurtured and offered, here's what this is, and given those opportunities. So it's a lot of the council recruitment is one-on-one. Now, not everybody, but a lot of it is like that. But I think that the opportunity to run for an office, I think is becoming less, I think it's becoming more understood. When I was growing up, I always thought it was this thing people did and I had no understanding of what that could be. I think people have more familiarity right now and realize that it's okay to run for an office, even if you maybe don't have the typical credentials that you think should be there. When I was younger, I always thought that mostly lawyers ran for office, and that is not true. I think that people have misunderstandings about it, but I think that that's one way to break down the barriers of who can run for office, is to, certainly do your homework and research what the job is, because you don't want to get yourself in a position where you don't know what's expected of you. But I think that the limitations sometimes that we or society put on ourselves to hold office or apply for a job or whatever aren't really part of the reality. So I think it's important for us to kind of push those boundaries too. I don't know if that's totally what you're asking, but that's kind of, I think we really have to reach out and think about differently about how we are represented, and encourage people. It might not be you, but it might be people that you know from school, and you think, oh my gosh, that person is really thoughtful and listens well and has great ideas. And, maybe not now, but maybe someday that's something that they could do. Maybe it is now to run for an office or be part of a commission or be on one of our boards. We have a lot of volunteers that are on boards and commissions, and think about, how do I spend my time in the community? How do I volunteer my time? How do I use my hours of my day? And maybe that is something, maybe I do want to be part of that process and change the system, or have that input and be one of those voices that is willing to put myself out there and be part of that. I see that Tifa is on here, and Angie was on here, and they're both on our Human Services Commission, Arts and Culture. Angie's on Arts and Culture. Tifa, I'm sorry, I can't remember which commission you're on.
I'm on Arts and Culture.
Thank you. Like, wait a minute, no, like you're on Arts and Culture. But they said, you know what, I want to be that voice. I want to be part of that, and I want to be part of making this community better. And my voice, either my thoughts are being represented now, or I have really great ideas, and I think I could be a really huge contributor to what makes the city wonderful. And thankfully we have people like that who step up, and that's how government works best. But just like you all are doing, is you actively participate. You clearly have done your research, and you're thinking about, what are we doing now, and what are ways we need to do things better, and how do I make that happen? And I just think that is what makes some of the best parts of democracy, is this kind of work. Once again, I talk too much. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. And then also,
it's very exciting to me.
To just loop around to the first part of the question. So
yeah,
does the council have any structure in place to interact on a cyclical basis with marginalized communities in Redmond, similar to the Community Equity Action Team for the police department?
Gotcha. So I'm separate from the council. I'm separately elected. So the council is a separate body of elected officials. Currently now as a city, we have the seat team, but we have been talking about, what if we created another board of commission, like an equity team, or whatever you want to call it, to work with our new, in part of working on our outreach on diversity, equity, inclusion. But part of that will be the discussion with hiring the new manager. I think because it'll be as a big system, is that something that we want to bring on? Is that something that would help fulfill some of that need to really hear a lot of diverse voices? I think the C team does that really well for the police. It is an excellent model. And I think there's, in the plan we have as a city that my staff has developed over the last few years, that is one of their goals, is to have that kind of commission. Right now, part of that work does go to the Arts and Culture Commission, because they have championed that work. But I think that in balancing a lot of the arts and culture work that they do, I think there's a lot more we could do if we weren't, it had more exposure, more people involved. So it is part of the plan, but I think it will probably take a little bit of time as we bring on that manager to think about how we want to develop that and how we want to really make it an effective community group.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I had another question. So we were kind of going through some of the meeting minutes and agendas of some of the council meetings. And we noticed there was like on specific dates, specifically when like the peak of this like Black Lives Matter movement, all these protests in Seattle, there were a lot of there were things that were brought up by council members that they heard from other members of the community, specifically around Black Lives Matter, defunding the police, and all these different things, reallocating resources, and like banning chokeholds as well, things like that. And we couldn't find any direct things that like came out of that within the council documents that we found. And so we're wondering if there are any changes that were made due to that like public outpour of conversation about BLM and call into action, and what actions are being taken, if any.
So I'll answer one part of it, and then I think that I'll have Chief talk about the police specific aspects of it. So so one thing in watching council meetings, what you don't see is all the email and calls and other things we get too. So there's that piece of it. Just to let you know, just generally speaking, we get all kinds of voices all over the map. So that's one. But the council in particular definitely heard all of that. Some of that work was in the chief produced a document, I think it's online, about what our police are doing and what they aren't doing. And in all of that, I did sign on to the Obama pledge, the 8 Can't Wait, and so we're working through all of that as well. The Black Lives Matter, so the council brought forward a working document of a resolution on Black Lives Matter, and they got a little caught up in wanting to make sure the statement that they made was clear, and also listening to Black voices in our community. And what they realized was that they had heard from some voices in the community, but they really hadn't had a forum to really listen to people in a more open way. So they have been working since then on bringing a listening session together, and I think it'll be in October. They're in the midst of trying to hire a facilitator for that. And so their goal was to have that session, that listening session, and then come back to the Black Lives Matter resolution and really make it what they're hearing from the community. So it may seem slow and that doesn't have resolution yet. And my goal always is I think resolutions can be fine, but it's really in the actions that you do and the changes that you make and all of the work that you do that's really important in making those changes. So that's kind of where they are. And I hope to see that from their listening session, they'll come to consensus and move something forward with that. But meanwhile, on our side of things, my city side of things, or I'm working with the staff, we are still continuing on that work. Like I said, we're looking at hiring a diversity, equity, inclusion manager in the budget, and we're doing other work in those areas that we're hearing from the community as well. But it's just not as visible as we probably would be better served if we were a little more visible about it. But we are continuing on in that work. We absolutely have, we know, we hear you, and we are continuing to move forward on some of the changes that need to be made, and also sharing with you some of the work that we have done, like the questions you've asked today are really important to know that how we serve our community is not a one-way thing. We really try hard to serve all the members of our community in the best way we can. But Chief, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the council and the outreach from the community to the council about specific Black Lives Matter issues.
Yeah, so as the mayor mentioned, we've worked together. I've worked with the mayor in regards to the Obama Foundation's pledge, 8 Can't Wait, in various groups. A vast majority of the reform requests that are being made by the groups were already in place here at the Redmond Police Department. The one area that I'll say we were not in compliance with, or that currently exists within our use of force policy, is what's referred to as a LVNR, or lateral vascular neck restraint. That is part of our policy. upon the death of George Floyd, I elevated that to a deadly force use of force. So it can only be used in a circumstance commensurate with when an officer would possibly be able to use a firearm. Since that time, I've been in, I won't call it negotiations, but in communication with the labor group in a process to remove it completely from our policy. I have heard back from them, and they are in agreement that we will be removing that from our policy in its entirety. However, I'll say the ink is not dry on that yet, so I can't roll it out as an official policy as of yet, but we are in agreement that it will in fact go away. So that is probably the most significant change as a result of the Black Lives Matter movement is that part. As I said before, all of the other aspects of the various groups of Eight Can't Wait and from the Obama Foundation, we were already in compliance with.
Okay, thank you. And so I wanted to also talk a little bit about student or school resource officers. So what's the situation around SROs in the, I guess, how does Redmond connect to the LW school district's contract with the SROs? Are the officers that are in Redmond High School and Redmond Middle School from the Redmond Police Departments? And is the contract through one between Redmond Police Department and LW School District, or are they deployed from a different department?
So the officers in Redmond are from the Redmond Police Department, and it is in conjunction or in collaboration with the Lake Washington School District. The SROs are also funded by way of a public safety levy. So that was something that was passed prior to my arrival. So that was voted on by the citizens and then passed to actually fund the SROs to be in the schools here in Redmond. And then as I understand it, obviously with COVID, school thing is in flux. They have a portion of students present on campus. So we are working through what the SRO program will look like for this school year moving forward.
All right. And what training has those officers been through to like make them prepared for the situation that they could encounter within a school? Because it's a very different like environment.
Correct. So there is a state law which mandates the specific training which an SRO or school resource officer must attend or be certified in. Off the top of my head, I know it's at least 40 hours. It may be an 80-hour school, but for those that want to research the law, it is all based on law. So there is a specific RCW that covers school resource officer requirements. All of our officers meet those requirements before they're ever deployed, onto a school campus.
Okay, thank you.
Or just as a follow-up, so this kind of goes into it's related to my question about the Community Equity Action Team, but has the Redmond Police Department done any effort to hear about students' voices and opinions and experiences with SROs? And has that at all influenced how the SRO program is hosted by or is run pretty much?
So in the year I've been here, I've heard from youth voices one other time, not including this particular meeting. As I said in our last seat meeting, there were youth representatives that were there and expressed opinions about the SRO program. Those opinions range from very positive to neutral. One youth indicated that they were aware of the SRO program or aware of the SRO in their school, but really had no contact or interaction, or really had no opinion about it other than the fact that, yeah, they knew it existed. The other youth that was part of the meeting actually shared, I'll say, positive experiences, with the SROs. And then we have individuals on seat that I'll say are young adults, so out of the high school arena, but in the early 20s, they also shared some of their positive experiences, with SROs at the schools that they were involved in, not specifically, in Redmond.
Cool. And just out of curiosity, were these high schoolers BIPOC community members? If you know.
I don't know.
Got
I
it.
had a question for Mayor Bernie. So you were talking about this forum where you can listen to community members and hear their needs for this Black Lives Matter resolution. This just reminded me of something similar that we did. We called it like Pick Up the Megaphone, where it was like an open forum for people to share their experiences. So we totally love to, if you need a way to advertise that, we can totally collaborate with you in that sense. But I was along those lines, I was wondering what that outreach would look like and how you'd make sure that the community knows that that is an option for them to come and speak at.
Well, that is a great question. And I didn't quite hear who you said, it cut out who the group is that you helped organize outreach to get people to speak.
Yeah, sorry, we're like the Eastside Change Coalition, so we posted
Right.
like a bunch of events, and one of
Okay.
them was that Pick Up the
Got you.
Megaphone.
Okay. So I will take you up on that offer. We use our usual communications to get outreach in that. We have all of our city channels on Twitter and Facebook. We have our city website. We have a newsletter. We have all kinds of ways to get outreach. But I will share with you that it is a little bit harder in COVID because people are so limited. It's really social media that is the thing. We don't have a Redmond Reporter newspaper anymore, as far as I know. So there's not that limited way to get the outreach out. People aren't at school or out in the community where they can chat with each other about, hey, this thing's coming up. So if you have any other ideas, then I will take you. I wrote that down. So I'm gonna follow you up with that when we know the date and the time. If you have any other ideas on how to do outreach during this time and during any time, honestly, I would love to hear that as well, because it is, I don't know, it is really hard to get out information into the community, and especially in a timely fashion. And so we struggle with that, but we do the best we can. We get pretty good outreach, to be honest. But I think that there are a lot of areas, in particular with young adults, where we were probably not getting the outreach that we would like to have. So, but I will make sure. I think that we have an email for you. I don't know if it's yours, but we have an email, and so I'll make sure that we connect you when we do have that information. And I'd love for all of you to, if you can, to participate whenever that is, to be some of those voices, because you clearly, are really tuned to what's going on. So that would be great.
And then I had a follow-up to that, and then we're going to open it up to anybody in this call who had a question. I was wondering, so we can kind of frame ourselves like going into a meeting like that, what types of measurable actions are you guys able to do to support the BIPOC community in Redmond? Because I know people can share their experiences, but I just wanted to know the kind of framework or ideas that you guys might have already had.
To be honest, I think that we do some pretty basic things, but I think that we probably lack a little creativity in how we're going to move forward with some things. So I am very open to ideas. I of a different generation than all of you, and of a different life experience than you as well. And I think it's important that we kind of open our minds to different ways to do things. So mostly my restrictions are time and money, to be honest. You have to be thoughtful about what you decide to move forward with, making, do enough planning that you make sure it's going to be successful enough, and have the time, thoughtful about the time that is expenditure or how long something might take, and then making sure you have the resources or money available to really make it happen. And so for me, that's really where it is. But I'm very open to thinking about how to do things differently. I think that that's how we get better, is to continuously learning and growing. So that's not a specific answer, but that's kind of where I would fall on all of that in guiding my staff and the community on where we should be going.
No, it's good to know that you guys are open to hearing different ideas. So now I wanted to give anyone else in the call the opportunity to ask a question. I know there was one question in the chat, but I wanted to know if anyone else was holding on to a question that they wanted to ask. And you can just turn on your microphone, or you can type it in the chat and we can say it for you.
It looks like we have a raised hand from Joy Randall. If you have something to say, go ahead.
Yes, hi there. I had, I guess, a couple questions. Maybe this is for both the mayor and then also for the chief. Wondering about the diversity training that you mentioned all of the staff that work through the city obtain. Is that ongoing, or is this sort of like a one and done training? And the chief mentioned that all police officers in the state of Washington are trained in de-escalation training as well. So I'm just wondering, is that ongoing or also a one and done? And along the lines, as far as with the chief, he mentioned he was looking for more mental health professionals that could be hired for the program, which sounds really great that Redmond is doing. Are you searching nationwide, or I guess it sounds like you're having trouble finding people. So just wondering what is sort of the pool you're looking at, if it is nationwide, because I feel like there should be people out there. Just where are you looking?
I'll take mine because I think it's quicker, and I'll let the chief answer his. The training. So the training was set up prior to my arrival as mayor. I think some of the planning was that then we would start to look at, like we mentioned, having another border commission on diversity, equity, inclusion, and there's some other tasks, some other thoughts forward on, how to move the city forward in that. But the training itself, as for what maybe the next step in training or what that training would lead to, I unfortunately I'm unclear on that because I wasn't the one that instigated that program. Where I see it now, though, is that it is just the beginning. So once we level set with staff, then we look to, okay, and now what's next? What kind of training is next? What kind of opportunities next? What kind of ways do we need to use what we've learned to really start to make some changes? So that's how I see it. I think, to your point, I think a lot of trainings are kind of, now we've done it, we're good, that's all we need. And I've just never looked at it that way. I think it should have a purpose, and that should have a continuation so you can keep growing and changing. So that's how I see it. And I think you asked if the SEAT team was going to work with or the diversity, equity, inclusion manager would work with the SEAT team, I think was your earlier question on the chat.
Yeah.
And that is, I would imagine so, but that's undefined at this time because we haven't laid out the job description or hired the persons. But I would imagine that would be a nexus, absolutely, that they would do some work together.
Thank you.
Right, and to just add on to what the mayor was saying, as I understand, the diversity program currently within the city is part of a new employees onboarding process, and I believe it was going to be part of a bigger program. We will kind of reevaluate where that fits in with the DEI manager that we're going to bring on board within the police department as it relates to diversity, but more so as it relates to implicit bias and procedural justice. I've just put together a training cadre internal to the police department that will be providing training specifically to all police employees. I have a background in that I bring with me from Southern California in that particular area. So as a matter of fact, we had our first trainers meeting today to kind of introduce that topic and moving forward. So internally within the police department, we will, I'll say, continue those conversations and make sure that procedural justice and implicit bias training occurs within the police department. And then for our training cycle, it would be on a biannual basis. So in essence, it will take us approximately a year through our year of in-service training to get everybody in the department through it. As we move into the next year, we'll see what changes occur within the laws and or process or procedure. With all the conversation right now centered around police reform, we will make whatever changes that are necessary to that particular curriculum, and then we would look to do it again in 2023, just as a rough outline off the top of my head. As far as where the search has occurred for the mental health professionals, so at this point we work through and I want to call it a company, an entity called Icron. They are the ones who helped us find Ms. Kroll, and they would be the ones that would help in this particular search. So to my knowledge, we have not done a nationwide search because at this point, while there are other co-response models out there, there are not a number of full-time positions available in other municipalities. Right now, where we sit here in Redmond, the ability that I have moving forward is for a part-time position. So I don't know that they would do a nationwide search for a part-time job. But moving forward, should additional full-time positions become available, then at that point, a nationwide search may be more appropriate. But then also keeping in mind that with whatever licensing requirements for the state of Washington, that may preclude individuals from outside of the area coming in because of those various certifications.
Thank you. Can I just add on for the chief as far as SROs, and maybe this is in collaboration with the schools, are the SROs, I guess, how often are they utilized for discipline?
So to my knowledge, the SROs are not part of the disciplinary process. And I know, I believe there's a couple questions in the chat that I saw. I'll try and scroll through it and get you request an answer offline. But specifically the question for the group and for the recording, the question was, as far as forward-facing statistics about SRO uses of force, specifically with students. Presently, we don't have a platform or a mechanism for reporting that outward-facing, but I can tell you just in the year that I've been here, there were no uses of force by the SROs in the school system. Prior to 2019, I can't speak to that presently, but we are also looking at, as part of our transparency and communication efforts with the community, we are looking for forward-facing platforms to make our various data sets available to the public, searchable by the public, and not just the information, say that I'll say is put out by the police department. So we are looking at the various solutions for that, and I hope to be able to move forward with something in 2021 to make that information available to the public.
And I'm happy to answer. There's one question there about what if there's someone in our community having a mental health issue, is the only choice to call 911? And I would say no. Or I would say, is the police officer with a gun the only response? And I would say no to that. We have a couple of things that we have. Our homeless outreach coordinator, Tiza, who is out in our community, and she is well versed in dealing with a lot of the community members who struggle with mental illness and homelessness in our community. And she, and before her, Kent Hay did the same. A lot of business owners know to call them, and they come and offer assistance and help get help to those individuals who are chronically homeless in our community. So that's one little bit. We also have the community court setup that we talked about earlier, where every Wednesday we have, well, in normal times, we have the community help available, the nonprofits, and their mental health assistance available there to help give people referrals. We also, if someone does call 911 and someone is having a mental health crisis, we do have some other options as well. Generally speaking, we would, if it was a nonviolent in nature, we would send our medics there. And we also have what's called a mobile integrated health unit that meets with people who chronically call 911 for non-emergency issues, and they clearly need some more assistance than they're being offered for whatever reason. And so that group that's funded through the Medic One levy that passed last year, that group helps get people into services to help serve them better, whatever it might be. So we do have some we do have some different levers in our community. I think the unfortunate nature is someone's having a mental health crisis and they're violent. Unfortunately, it doesn't leave a lot of options. We don't see that too much in Redmond, but we do see it. And so we have to, once again, balance that public safety and the individual. I know that the chief and our department works really hard to approach situations very carefully and make sure we're treating individuals with as much grace and dignity as possible. And so that I appreciate that. But there are some situations that really are very challenging for the general public safety. So it's not a great answer. I would say a better answer is, and I work with Senator Dinger on this, is, you know, part of the big problem is we need to get better mental health assistance in our state, and we need to be funding those programs that really give people the help they need so that they don't become part of the challenging situation that our officers face. So it's really a more systemic problem and a higher state level than we can handle as a city. But those are some of the areas she's working in to help create those opportunities to create the assistance that's needed on a grander scale.
Thanks, Mayor Bernie. And just for a takeaway, I wasn't aware of you said her name is Tiza. How do we get that information out to the public more, that this is a resource?
That's a great question. She should be on our website. If you look under, it might be a little convoluted, and just let me know if it is. But her contact information is available on our website. And if you can't find it, can you just send me an email and we'll make sure we make that easier to find.
And just so I can try and find it, could you spell Tiza, T-I-Z-A, or what's?
It's T-I-S-A, it's Tiza Rutherford. Let me,
Okay.
give me a moment and I will make sure I'm spelling things correctly.
Yeah, or any link to that.
Look at my address book.
It's T-I-Z-A.
Is it T-I-Z-A? Oh, there you go.
T-I-Z-A.
And then another question that we had was, well, there's one question in the chat that says, just to clarify, are officer complaints or officer records available to the public? And if so, where and how can we get access to that? And then on a similar note, we were trying to research the city council meetings, and we were wondering if the meeting minutes get posted. We saw that there were a few, but if there's a reason why some are posted and some aren't, and if there is any recording of them now that they are virtual. So it's kind of a two-parter.
Apology, I was trying to look up her email so I could post it on the chat. So council meetings, whether or not so they're all available by video. They should be links on there. I think they get them up there pretty quickly on the council website on the meeting calendar. So you should be able to look at it that way. As far as notes go, I would say they're extremely behind on that. And I'm not sure what the turnaround time is that, but probably the better way to do it is just to watch the video of the meetings that's available. And it's all the different items on the meetings are bookmarked, so you can just kind of click to the thing you want to listen to.
Okay.
But yes, the minutes themselves are or there's no like line by line, like right out of what the meetings are. The minutes are just kind of this condensed legal thing.
Okay, and then are those officer complaints available to the public?
So yeah, if you file a PRR or public records request, then that information would be made available. We do publish a annual report on the number and type of complaints and the dispositions. So those are done annually. And then again, if individuals have, say specific requests, or they want to know a specific month or something like that, then just file a PRR, and then it would be fulfilled, through that normal process.
Okay, thank you. And then how do you, this is kind of a more personal question, but how do you feel about the signs around Redmond City Hall and Redmond Library saying defend democracy, support police?
It's First Amendment speech from whomever or whatever group it is that I'll say paid for it and posted, as long as it is in compliance with the municipal code. As far as, for posting signs, then it is what it is.
I think we answered all of the questions. Did anybody else have any other questions? Okay. If you both, Mayor Bernie and Chief Lowe, if you could put your email addresses in the chat just so that people have access to that, or phone numbers or whatever contact information would be great for you. We're going to end it here. Thank you again so much for coming to this meeting, to everyone who attended. Again, we are the Eastside Change Coalition. If you want to contact us, you can contact us at eastsidechangecoalition@gmail.com. Someone's going to type it in the chat right now. Trey or Gaia, could you do that? So you can contact us there, or you can find us on Instagram at the Eastside CC. But again, we are committed to this work and making it a safe and equitable space for BIPOC community members on the East Side. So thank you so much for coming. Bye.
Right. Thank you.